Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. I hope that you are doing well and that you had a nice weekend doing whatever it was that you did, and that you are looking forward to another week in the philosophy of alcohol. So this week we are going to take kind of like putting all the pieces together. And what that means is that we're going to this week look at kind of the history of alcohol. Now, I want to just kind of flat out say out of the gates here that by no means am I a historian. By no means am I exponentially well versed in the history of alcohol. Over the last couple of years, I've definitely become more interested in it, more fascinated by it. I feel at least like I've got a foundation, but I by no means have an expertise. So I do want to just kind of recognize my own ignorance, my own naivete out of the gates. However, with that, I do think that we can still have meaningful conversations, and I think that we can all kind of like bring both our own history, but also kind of a little bit of our collective knowledge, a little bit of our collective history as well. And one of the things that I think is kind of one of the most rewarding and worthwhile kind of conversations that we can have in here, and when I say in here, I mean in the philosophy of alcohol, is consider the fact that how much of society, of culture, of cultures, of the development of civilization has either occurred simultaneous with or in conjunction to alcohol. Okay? And as we'll dive into both articles from Handling the Hard Stuff and the article for National Geographic, which is linked in your folder, I think that we'll actually be able to kind of see and explore some ways of considering this kind of rich history that is connected to human development, human development, human growth, human conquest of not only land, but when we think about cultures, civilizations, etc., etc. Okay? And so as we kind of dive in today, one question that I always like to start with is, well, what is your own personal history of and with alcohol? Okay? That again, I know that might be an overly intense question. Maybe it's an overly personal question. But I think that it should require a little bit of thought, right? And I'm not just asking you, do you drink? And if so, how much do you drink? But I'm asking you, like, when you think back on your history with alcohol, when you think back on your experience with alcohol, whether that's within your family, whether that's within culture, society, religion, like what is that history? What is that experience? Okay? And so we can start at the very individual level of our own kind of introspection. And then we can kind of make it even further, right? And then we can start really asking questions, well, what's the history of alcohol and religion? Okay? And I mentioned this last week in class as like a little teaser, but in the New Testament, Jesus Christ as the figure of Christianity, right? His first miracle was turning water into wine. So does that at a wedding ceremony, right? So does that have significance? When we think about one's exposure, one's curiosity, one's familiarity with alcohol. Similarly, staying kind of within the Christian tradition, the Eucharist, which is practiced not only in Catholicism but in a lot of Protestant traditions, is the body and the blood of Christ, right? And the idea that the blood of Christ is often symbolized as wine, right? Because that's what Jesus held up in the Last Supper. So, really kind of thinking about, what are our constructs and what is our history, societally, culturally, religiously with alcohol. And also, to that end, I can think as a young kid, and I know that they're still really popular. The Super Bowl's coming up. Go Chiefs. This isn't the Chiefs, but this is the Kansas City Royals logo, so we're still repping Kansas sports for the week in prep for the Super Bowl. But I can remember as a kid these really important, or at least my parents really liking the Budweiser commercials, right, for beer. And again, not really knowing what Budweiser was, or knowing that it was beer, but not knowing what beer meant, right? So as we start to kind of investigate and examine these questions on the history of alcohol, I mean, start personally. Start kind of like thinking about your own personal history with alcohol. And then what that might look like today. If you're an active consumer of alcohol, if you're peripherally consuming, or maybe your friends consume, and maybe you don't consume alcohol. Maybe you're just abstaining, or maybe you're just not really drawn to it, which is fine, right? So thinking about your own kind of history with alcohol as it relates to your life, but also like what has your history led you to today. So anyway, thinking about history or thinking about alcohol and religion, thinking about alcohol and government, alcohol and medicine, where often even 130 years ago, often you'll see bitters at a bar. Well, bitters, were like a tincture, and they were kind of offered as a medical remedy, or if someone was going to go through surgery where they, might have had like a big shot of whiskey to try to numb the pain, right? So thinking about, the way that various alcohol has played in that medical side of history, okay? And then just thinking about alcohol in society, right? Like what can we learn, what can we know, what can we experience from our knowledge of kind of the presence of alcohol throughout the course of human history, okay? All right, so those are just some of the intro questions that I want to start engaging with this week. In the next video, we're going to work through the National Geographic article there. So the 9,000-year love affair with booze. So I want to start here, which gives us, again, some timelines, and then I want to work through one of the graphs. And then on Thursday, in your Thursday folder, you'll find, I don't know how many videos, but you'll find videos as they relate to 2 articles in handling the hard stuff. Okay? So that's what's to expect today, and I'll see you all in the next video.